Good evening, and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My co-host, the marvelous Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour over 4 years ago in the throes of the official pandemic, just to help people stay connected around this virtual campfire. And we've been having so much fun. We've been just coming back pretty much every Wednesday this whole time. Welcome to those of you returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading their own work, and tonight, this is very special. Both of our writer guests are reading for us for the very first time. Tonight's readers are Pauline Barmby and Lauren C. Teffeau. If you are here on Zoom, feel free to chime in on the text chat if you like. And if you're joining us on Facebook, feel free to chime in on that text chat, but we may not be able to answer you in a timely fashion, so please don't take it personally. We'll catch up with you after. So our first reader tonight is Pauline Barmby. Pauline Barmby is an astrophysicist who believes that you can't have too many favorite galaxies. She lives in London, Canada, and hopes to someday visit her namesake main belt asteroid, minor planet 281067. When not reading or writing, she is probably knitting or running. Her fiction has appeared in Nature Futures, Utopia Science Fiction, and On Spec, and in multiple anthologies. Find out more at her website, galacticwords.com. Pauline, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
It is great to have you. So what do you have for us tonight?
I have Solar Gravitational Lens. It's a story that first appeared in On Spec back in December 2023, and it's going to be out again in less than a month, I think, in Year's Best Canadian Fantasy and Science Fiction Volume 2.
Congratulations, that is wonderful. Do we have any content warnings that we need to be thinking about in case we're delicate?
The world might possibly end, but we're not quite sure.
Okay. I deal with that every day. I think I'm all right. I turn the mic over to you.
Sounds good. Solar Gravitational Lens. It was lonely and cold and dark and beautiful at the Solar Gravitational Lens point, 600 AU from the sun. I was as far from Earth as any human had ever been, if you count an uploaded consciousness as human. The 7-decade trip had been uneventful, and I was ready to get to work. The biggest radio dishes on Earth were supposed to be already trained on me, awaiting every last bit. And they were supposed to respond to my transmissions, too. Sending a telescope to the outer solar system, where the sun's gravity made a natural lens to image the planetary system around YZ Ceti, was the longest space science mission ever. But the transit had run so close to the expected timeline and trajectory that mission control should be waiting for my contact and know where to look. I spent half my professional life working on the preparations for this mission when the upload technology came along, about the same time as the cancer diagnosis. Since my brain wasn't going to last much longer anyway, I was the logical choice for the destructive upload. I had a spacecraft to carry me, a shiny telescope to aim at the nearest planet-hosting star, a radiothermal generator to keep everything warm and powered, and plenty of books to read. It's pretty cool to read about spaceships when you are one, or at least traveling as part of one. Maybe my spacecraft wasn't transmitting. All the fault diagnostics and telemetry showed nominal. The magnetic shield that had protected the spacecraft from cosmic rays and interplanetary debris during transit was permanently switched off. Everything was fine 5 years ago, and now no one wanted to talk to me? I'd already had a hint of that. When I left, the hardest part had been saying goodbye to my wife and son. I hadn't expected her to survive the full transit. She didn't even make it another decade. When I shut off the magnetic shield for the second of the every 5-year check-ins, Mission Control let me know that she had died in an epidemic. After that, I'd only heard from my son once, a brief and impersonal update. I guess he'd given up on the old man. Earth was a light week away, and the communication business was maddeningly slow. The flight rules said I had to wait 8 weeks before continuing the mission without Earth contact. I'd slowed my CPU, but even that wasn't helping much. I tried to read, but kept stopping every few minutes to check the high gain antenna status. Eventually, I decided to drop into sleep mode and wake up when the 8 weeks were over or the HGA received a signal from Earth. Waking up in silico is quite the jolt, from glacial awareness to full consciousness in one tick of a CPU clock. The mission elapsed time had advanced 8 weeks, and there was still no contact with Earth. Nuevo Arecibo could have been taken out by another hurricane, but other antennas should still have been able to transmit. I scanned through the comm system logs in case somehow the subroutine to wake me up hadn't worked. Nothing. I slewed the spacecraft around, and the detectors and the star tracker cameras briefly saturated as the sun passed through their field. At least it was still there. Continuing the mission meant giving the commands to heat up the telescope's motors and other moving parts, and then waiting for a couple days until everything was at nominal operating temperature. I tried reading War and Peace for the umpteenth time, then switched to the more tolerable Moby Dick. Temperatures equilibrated. I gave the command to deploy the telescope. Slowly, the mechanisms extended. The primary mirror unfolded like an umbrella with even tension on all 3 lines. If I'd been in real-time contact with Earth, a lot of people in mission control would have exhaled. The next step was to move the secondary mirror into place. It had worked fine for JWST. It should be fine here, right? Only 1 degree in freedom, back and forth along the optical axis. I gave the commands to actuate the motors, and the little disc slid right into place, and then kept going. Was it going to somehow work itself loose and fly off into space? Stay calm. Not that I had much choice. The upload system allowed my computation speed to increase momentarily if additional processing demand was detected, but with a time lag and a negative coupling constant built into the routine to slow it back down again. Panic didn't lead to more panic. I was running fast enough that I'd had time to put the entire fault tree into working memory during the few seconds of the overrun. I worked through the steps methodically and found the command to reverse the direction. The mirror settled back into the correct location, and I disconnected the power to the motors. That mirror wasn't moving again if I had anything to say about it. The telescope needed time to settle and dump the motor's residual heat, so there was again nothing to do for a few days. I composed yet another telemetry update for Earth. As the spacecraft swung to get the antenna into the right orientation, a star blinked out on one of the star tracker cameras. Bad pixels? I'd worry about it later. After finishing the transmission, I needed to rest. The need to slow down after a stressful event was one of the human traits built into the upload system. Even though they hadn't implemented dreaming before I left, brief periods of unconsciousness were still vital. I set the software alarm to wake me in a few hours. Maybe I spoke too soon about dreaming. Cosmic ray hits to the memory transfer hardware sometimes sent random packets to my working RAM, and I woke with the memory of standing in the backyard with my son, his small warm body snuggled into mine. I was pointing out the bright stars as I held him up so he could sight along my outstretched arm. Did he ever look at those stars and remember? Still no contact from Earth. I pulled up the star tracker data. Viewed frame by frame, it wasn't one star blinking out, but rather a whole series of blinkouts in a path that was almost a straight line. It was as if something had passed across the camera's field of view. Meteoroid or chunk of ice? Density out here in the solar system boondocks should be low, but it was possible. A dark cosmic ray that briefly shorted out the pixels without depositing any charge? Maybe. I decided to scan the spacecraft around to see whether the problem would reappear. The crimson streak of Arcturus was followed by the actinic blue of Spica, then Denebola and Regulus. Wait, there it was again. How could there be a dark patch several degrees across with no stars? It had to be something in the foreground that the star tracker cameras couldn't focus on. It was more than a bit ironic that I was sent out here to see something 4 parsecs away, but with no ability to see what was right in front of me. The comm system registered an interrupt. The antenna was picking up a signal from the same direction as the blank patch. Not the same scratchy noise as the previous signal or the usual frequency modulated data stream. This was a very clear set of discrete on-off pulses. Beep, pause. Beep, pause. Beep, beep, pause. Beep, 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 pause. Beep, 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 pause. 8 beeps, pause. 13. The sequence continued up to 55 and stopped. Oh, the Fibonacci sequence? I ran a diagnostic on the COM subsystem. This had to be some kind of leftover in the code, maybe a remnant from a testing sequence, or maybe a joke, something a smart-ass engineer thought would keep me entertained. The transmission started up again, this time running another 10 steps of the sequence to 6,765. Counting in thousands gave me time to think. There's no way this could be natural. Pulsars don't do arithmetic, and neither do FRBs. Background stars blocked, an artificial radio transmission. Could it be a spacecraft? What else could it be? There were no mission rules to cover this situation. In retrospect, maybe there should have been. If you knew there was life on both Earth and YZ SETI C, then the SGL position could be considered a logical meeting spot. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. It didn't make sense for a spacecraft sent from Earth to check on me. They could have developed some faster propulsion method in the decades since I left, but surely it would be easier just to talk to me by radio than send something out here. And if it was an Earth spacecraft, they'd use the standard comms protocols. Should I try to communicate? If there was an alien spacecraft nearby, probably they already knew there was life somewhere in the solar system, and it wouldn't take much more than a radio receiver to know that Earth was where the action was. Unless there wasn't anyone left on Earth, and that's why they weren't answering me? And what if this, whatever it was the reason there wasn't anyone left on Earth? I couldn't run or hide. Talking was all I had. I retransmitted the first part of the Fibonacci sequence and waited. If my antenna could have quivered with excitement, it would have. The sequence was transmitted back after only a few seconds delay. The source had to be nearby. Depending on how long it took the sender to make up their mind, the source could be anywhere from right next to me to 1,000,000 kilometers away. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. This had to be a first contact situation. Wow. I slowed my processor down, calming the racing thoughts. What to do next? Another transmission arrived. This time, it wasn't Fibonacci, but a series of regular pulses and pauses. A 2-bit code, maybe? There were 1,679 bits in all. Product of primes? Yes. If I reorganized the bits into a 23 by 79 array, there it was, a black and white picture. Arecibo message style. I checked the relevant back issue of Omni, and in fact, it was the Arecibo message, complete with stick figure human, crude radio telescope, and solar system diagram. If we were going to have a conversation, as opposed to transmitting statements back and forth, then I needed a way to ask and answer questions. Finally, those years of science fiction reading came in handy. The classic starting point was establishing a vocabulary for basic arithmetic. With the number code from the Arecibo message, I sent back a page the same size as the message, containing arithmetic statements where I'd added symbols for plus and minus, yes and no. Many minutes passed with no response. Had I screwed it up somehow? What if I messed up our only opportunity to ever communicate with an extraterrestrial intelligence? What if I never got to tell anyone on Earth about this? It was probably hopeless, but I better report home again, just in case Earth was receiving, but unable to respond. I reoriented the spacecraft and sent off the communications log, starting from when I'd first detected the Fibonacci sequence. When I turned the spacecraft back towards the local transmission source, oh heck, I'd just call it a ship, the HGA picked up its transmission right away. The reply message included several more examples of arithmetic statements, both correct and incorrect, with an additional symbol after each of them. A question mark? I transmitted the yes-no answers for each statement, and the response was yes, yes, yes. I received another page, the solar system map from the Arecibo message, with a question symbol next to the Earth. Did I come from Earth? Yes, I replied. Another transmission, the human stick figure from the Arecibo message, next to a crude pixel drawing of my spacecraft and the question mark. Was I human or made by humans? Yes, I sent back. We were talking. This was amazing, and it seemed shockingly easy, so much so that I wondered again if it was all a joke. A subroutine planned it to give me something to do in case some mission critical system on the spacecraft failed. But what if it wasn't? I had nothing to lose by continuing, and potentially a lot to lose by stopping. I sent a picture depicting Earth, the Arecibo telescope from the message, and the question symbol. Is Earth transmitting? No. A new picture from me, Earth, the DNA symbol from the Arecibo message, and the question symbol. Is there life on Earth? Question mark. Meaning they didn't know, or good question, or what are you asking? Maybe this cross-species communication wasn't so easy after all. This was all a bit much. I needed a reason to take a break. I transmitted a picture that showed my spacecraft and the Arecibo telescope again, this time without the no symbol. I didn't really expect to be able to talk to Earth, but it seemed rude to just break off communication with no warning. I slew the spacecraft toward Earth and transmitted a complete log of everything that happened since I detected the ship, thinking furiously all the while. So I had encountered what was presumably some kind of alien ship, built by an intelligence that knew that there had been life on Earth and that there were planets around YZ Ceti. I didn't know where they were from or how they'd gotten here. Was there anyone alive on that ship? Why were they here? Were they planning to stay? If not, where were they going next? Did they know what had happened to Earth? Could they go there? Could they take me with them if they did? I stopped thinking about that kind of question for a minute as a bigger one hit me. Were they telling the truth? I had no way to tell. All I had to go on was the improbable fact that they were here in the first place. If they meant harm to Earth, hanging out in the far outer solar system wasn't exactly compatible with enacting evil plans. My transmission finished and I swung back to face the ship. It started transmitting again almost immediately, this time in a series of pages, a movie of sorts. The first few pages were pictures of my spacecraft, showing it in different orientations, presumably representing the motion as I turned toward and away from Earth. Then a picture of my spacecraft next to a much larger cylinder. Was that their ship? Must be. What was the funny-looking thing on one end? Could it be a magnetic field generator for a ram scoop? Wow, those things actually worked. It made sense as a way to travel interstellar distances if you weren't in a big hurry. The pages changed to a different set of images, a set of concentric near circles. The proportions looked about right. Yes, the orbits of the solar system planets. An ellipse formed, starting from the Earth's orbit and passing by Jupiter, ending in the outer solar system as the scale of the image changed. The series of images ended with a picture of my spacecraft, indicating our location at the SGL point. Yes, I sent, along with the picture of my craft. The images changed again, first to a crude image of a spiral galaxy, then a zoom in on a portion of the galaxy's disk. The transmission stopped. They were waiting for me to show I understood. Yes, I sent again. The image changed to a random pattern of dots, mostly in pairs or triples, but a few singles. The star map? I consulted the Gaia database of nearby stars, rotated the viewing angle, flipped it left to right. There it was. A view perpendicular to the galactic plane, showing the stars in a cylinder about 10 parsecs in radius and 5 parsecs high, centered on the sun. It reminded me of an antique map I'd found at my grandmother's house, a pull-out from a paper magazine. I recognized the Alpha Centauri system, Sirius A and B, 61 Cygni, Upsilon Indi, Procyon, all the neighbors. The next page showed a curved path connecting the sun and Procyon. I sent back the symbols for the ship and a question symbol, hoping they would get my meaning. Is that your home? Was that your journey? Yes. Another image with a picture of their spacecraft in a line connecting the sun and YZ Ceti. Their destination? I didn't have time to ask before the next image arrived. The same path, their spacecraft, and the picture of my spacecraft next to it with the question symbol. Want to come along? Holy cow. I sent a single page with a yes, no, and question symbols, hoping that would indicate my confusion. Another transmission showing the solar system again with Earth highlighted. A second page with Earth having moved 7 or 8 degrees in its orbit. A time indicator? The page with the future path again and the question symbol next to my spacecraft. We're leaving next week, Earth time. Are you coming? This time I didn't worry about being rude. I directed my antenna toward Earth, reporting everything since the last downlink. The chance to see another star system by being there, not just imaging it. To be not just humanity's first contactor, but its ambassador. Their spacecraft must have a power source for interstellar voyages, and hopefully they would share. There'd be plenty of time to devise better comms protocols, maybe even a hardware interface. But going with them would mean severing my last ties with home. Beyond the solar system, my transmitter wouldn't have the power to reach Earth. The more powerful antennas on Earth would only be able to reach me if my position was known. I might never find out why Earth hadn't responded or how my friends and family had lived their lives. My thoughts chased each other like photons circling the innermost stable orbit of a black hole. I tried to slow them down while the transmission continued. I could stay here and keep trying to contact Earth. The news of first contact would far outweigh my original mission. Or I could go off into the wild black yonder with an alien near stranger. It might be boring or dangerous or brief. It would be a little less lonely. I had a week to decide whether to abandon the mission I hadn't even started. A week's worth of observations would be enough for a crude image of YZ Ceti's planetary system. Maybe that would help me determine what to do. The telescope's now stable mirrors were bathed in starlight, so the last few steps were to open the telescope's eyes by retracting the camera's shutter, deploy the coronagraph to block out the sun, aim the telescope very carefully, and presto. Photons from YZ Ceti, B, C, and D. What would the planets look like? Would there be fluffy clouds? The sharp glint of starlight from an ocean, archipelagos, giant continents, shiny moons? The position sensor showed the shutter starting to move and then stopping, still 90% closed. In pre-launch testing, we'd been able to free a stuck shutter on a couple of occasions with an overvoltage pulse to the motor. Not this time. I sent the pulse again and for good measure added a tiny puff of the spacecraft thrusters, enough that it might jar the shutter mechanism loose. The position sensor registered no change. Crap. Out of contact with Earth and now busted hardware that meant that I couldn't carry out the mission. None of my other efforts to free the stuck shutter worked, not rebooting the camera, heating up the motor, or expelling compressed gas at the mechanism. Probably it just needed a tiny tap with a screwdriver, but I had no screwdriver and no hands to wield it with. Even if someone on the alien ship had hands, if there was anyone on it, there was no way to get at the shutter without taking my entire spacecraft apart. An automatic reminder pinged me a log status evaluation report. All systems nominal, except for a camera shutter that wouldn't open and a home planet that couldn't or wouldn't communicate. I was out here in the dark with no help and no great ideas. I had someone to talk to, but they'd been silent after making the offer, perhaps making their own observations through the solar gravitational lens. And they were about to leave. Another cosmic ray hit the memory transfer hardware, and I flashed back to the day my upload was approved. The mixture of pity, envy, and pride on my colleagues' faces, the worry and sorrow in my own as my wife sobbed into my shoulder, all of them were gone now. Was everyone on that pale blue dot gone? Were my son and others still there waiting to hear from me? I made my choice. Slewing the spacecraft toward Earth, I transmitted my complete logs 7 times for redundancy. After the last repeat, I added a single final word: goodbye. Turning to face the alien ship, I transmitted a single symbol: yes. Let's go.
Lovely. Lovely is not something I usually expect from hard science, but it really was.
Thank you
All the
so much.
emotions there. Thank you so much. Now, Daniel, you're the more discerning science fiction fan. I tend to be more on the fantasy horror side. But
Oh, this was awesome. Really,
yeah,
as a reader and a writer, it really hit my sweet spot. Really lovely work. Thank you so much.
really beautiful. I just loved that.
There's a lot of nerdy astronomy in there, as you can tell. You can kind of tell my profession from the story, but I'm fond of it too.
I could tell by the sure-handedness of it, but I didn't feel like it was either talking down to me or just sort of off in its own world, not caring if I was following, which can be the issues that I have with hard science sometimes, not having much of a scientific background. So thank you very much for making that accessible
Yeah,
to us humanities people too.
I'm a recovering applied mathematician, so I totally it was right up my alley.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And, no shade against hard science fiction in general, folks. It's just that I don't get most of it. So when someone can make it work for me, I think that's really, really impressive. Thank you. So it is our way between between the stories to just take a moment to let the first story resonate, sit in the mind for a moment, and just take a nice deep breath and ready ourselves for the next one. Everyone, that was the debut of Pauline Barmby on Story Hour, and we hope not the last time we'll be seeing her. Thank you. And on to our next reader tonight, another debut. Laura C. Teffeau is a speculative fiction writer based in New Mexico. Her environmental fantasy, A Hunger with No Name, will be published by the University of Tampa Press in fall of 2024. Her novel Implanted from Angry Robot was shortlisted for the 2019 Compton Crook Award for Best SF Fantasy Horror Novel and named a definitive work of climate fiction by Grist. She has published over 20 short stories in speculative fiction magazines and anthologies, including the Bram Stoker-nominated Chromophobia, a Strange House anthology of women in horror. Sorry, by women in horror. To learn more, please visit laurencteffeau.com, and I'll drop the link. Lauren, welcome.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. And
We are delighted to have you.
absolutely. And I'm just still taking in Pauline's story ahead of mine. So that was really great.
That was lovely, wasn't it?
Mhm.
We're excited for yours too, though. But before we get started, is there anything we need to know about this story?
Sure. In terms of content warnings, I would say there's mention of parental death. There is a lot of teenage angst. And the said teenager is not a fan of therapy. So that could be triggering for some people, I guess.
Okay, those are very good warnings.
And so I'm kicking it old school a little bit this year. With this story. This is one of my very first pro sales. It was published in Cross Genres magazine, which is now very, very defunct.
Yes, but that was a real treasure.
Yeah. It was revitalized in Spaceports and Spider Silk, which is a magazine geared towards younger readers. And I have never read it, or it's never been performed in audio, so I'm really happy for this opportunity.
Oh, how exciting. That's an honor for us too. Thank you, Lauren.
So it is called Forge and Fledge. And how did that make you feel, Zen? Dr. Valor asks in that soothing monotone of hers. I know every inch of her office on the upper level of the rig. The metal desk she primly sits behind, legs crossed at the ankles. Motivational posters in flimsy plastic frames. The eternal orange-tinted gloaming beyond the window. When the hydrocarbon clouds part, I can sometimes make out the rig's shadow as it drifts over Titan's frozen, craggy surface. I look down at my work boots. Droplets of grease fleck the toe box. Don't know. I mean, the training's all right, but I'd rather be in the machine shop. Dr. Valor taps something into her touchscreen. You feel safe there, the machine shop? Safe? That's a strange term for it. But then again, she's always twisting around my words. I like being there when I'm not in class, if that's what you mean. Why's that? What else is there for someone like me? Dr. Valor eyes me over her screen. You're angry. What? No, I look down at my hands, white-knuckled and knotted together. My chest heaves with every breath. We've talked before about your attitude. My head snaps up. But I'm not like him. That's why we have these sessions, to keep it that way. She holds my gaze, then turns back to her touchscreen. You'll be 17 next month. You can be something more than your parents then, but you have to want it. I cross my arms. Usually, I don't totally hate my sessions with Dr. Weller. When we first met, she told me she believed in nurture versus nature. Otherwise, she wouldn't have signed up for such an unglamorous position with a remote mining facility. She seems like she actually cares. Although her line of questioning makes me want to cut things short today. But if I bail, she'll say it's just another example of the genetic heritage inside me that we've been working so hard to keep subdued. Dr. Valor strums her fingers onto the desk in time to my heartbeat. Let's return to your vocational training. Your company trainer has been pleased by your aptitude. I stare at the ceiling. Rig staff members take turns babysitting me and the other kids in the converted meeting room every day. When they run out of things to teach us, they farm us out to the vocational trainer for part of the school day to see what position on the rig will be best suited for once we're old enough to legally do the work. The company never planned for us to be here. They're certainly not paying to ship us back to Earth, so they may as well find a use for us. Win-win. Not. Dr. Valor sighs, setting aside her touchscreen. At your request, I contacted your extended family. She pauses, like she always does when she's trying to come up with just the right words. Your mother's parents are dead, and your father's, well, they disowned him before he was even sentenced here. Technically, I'm an orphan of Titan, but I know who my mother is. She just can't claim me, because she'll always be a prisoner of the system. She told me once my father was another prisoner. They'd met during shift changes, and one thing led to another. That wasn't so shocking. After all, every kid on the rig has a similar story. But when she said my father was killed during a convict uprising on the rig a few years back, that was different. It meant I had to go to weekly meetings with Dr. Valor on top of my classes. I lift a shoulder at the news. It was a long shot. Dr. Valor hoped to convince my relatives to give me seed money for a transport that could take me to one of the Martian colonies, if not Earth itself, where there'd be more education and employment opportunities. After all, I can't help who my parents are. I don't deserve to be shackled to the same fate, but no one seems to care that me and the other orphans are rotting out here. I'm sorry, Zen, Dr. Valor says. Are we done? She blinks the hurt away quickly, her professional self once more. Next week, at our usual time. I should call it a day and rest up for my morning shift with the company trainer. But a live current hums underneath my skin, leaving me itchy and raw. Dr. Valor says that whenever I feel one of these moods coming on, it's best to distract myself with something else. My father's poor impulse control forever hanging over me. It's not like I can go outside. I've read enough Earth books to know what I'm missing. No green, no wide open spaces. I've been outside once, away from the rig's artificial gravity field, had to bundle up in one of the pressurized suits insulated to guard against the sub-zero temperatures. What surprised me most was the way the atmospheric pressure weighed down my body, even as my steps buoyed me up, thanks to the moon's low gravity. An odd combination, one of the engineers told us, makes it possible for the rig to hover above Titan's icy surface. She winked and then said that the high pressure and the low grav made even human flight possible. Not that there's anywhere to go. I settle on the machine shop, no matter what Dr. Valor thinks about that choice. Tocala greets me as I suit up and get my goggles and gloves into place. Crunch times, when they need stuff machined fast, I'll pitch in, but mostly I work on my own projects. Tocala's had some of them mounted to the walls around the rig. Say they brighten up the place. Not sure I believe that, but if it means I can keep working down here, that's fine with me. The first time I met him, he got in my face, demanding to know where I got my toys. I was 8, the youngest in the pack of orphans running wild through the rig before the company got the injunction to enforce mandatory contraception for prisoners. I didn't talk much then, just collected scrap metal and plastic, then cobbled everything together into silly sculptures and figurines. I'm pretty sure I stuttered when I explained this to Tocala. But he just grunted, and when I saw him again, he brought me some leftovers from the machine shop. Said when I got older, he'd let me onto the shop floor. These days, he says once my vocational training is done, he'll formally request me for the position. They'll pay me peanuts, but maybe one day, I'll earn enough for my passage away from this place. But I'm not holding my breath. I take out my latest project from the storage lockers lining the back wall. Tocala at once asked me what it's supposed to be. Told him I didn't know, but that's not true. I lay everything out on the workbench. Overlapping metal and plastic feathers riveted together, kept in segments to hide the truth. The light catches the silver and bronze rivets, the polished edges of the plastic. My chest constricts at the sight of my wings. Dr. Valor says it's healthy to have a creative outlet for all the emotions locked up inside. They need to get out, to be free. Let your mind soar, she once told me, and it'll be easier to forget my prison. I haven't told her about these. She'll probably say something like, it because I'm so secretive about them. I don't know. I must have an unhealthy fixation on their symbolic nature, or some crap like that. There's no winning with psychiatrists. Dinner's usually tinned military rations or rehydrated nutrition bars pressed into molds with a rotating array of sauces dumped on top. The convicts are kept busy enough, it doesn't matter so much what they eat, so long as they do. Orphans aren't so lucky. I take my tray and join a woman in an orange jumpsuit, ankles hobbled by magnetized shackles. She has brown hair going gray and a face that was once beautiful, now unremarkable. But a small smile changes all that when she sees me and slaps the plastic chair beside her. Then, how was school today? Shima asks. I scoff. The school is the minimum required by law, since the mining company realized too late they'd be responsible for any offspring their penal workers had. Dr. Valor has been giving me extra work to do for months, so I'd have an easier time getting caught up if I ever left this place. Not that it matters now. Shima chuckles into her water. You should have seen it. I was called to the shift leader's office today. What was it this time? Hey, what's with you? I could have done something good. You ever think of that? I raise my eyebrows. Shima said what she did wasn't so bad to warrant sterilization, same with the many of the other convicts. That's why she was given the opportunity to work off her sentence. But she never told me how much time she had left. I always assumed it was until her body finally quit on her. Shima holds up her hands. Fine. I've been a couple seconds late with my timing on the line. Marty thinks it's my joints, repetitive stress, whatever. Got an appointment with the company doc tomorrow. But that's not what I wanted to tell you. I take a bite of some sort of loaf covered in a thick yellow sauce with green specks. While I was in there, the foreman asks Marty to come to the observation room where his shift's over. I give Marty a hard time about it, ask him what he's done wrong. He tells me there's been a research vessel in the area to examine how Saturn affects Titan's orbit or something. She leans towards me. But get this. They refuse the staff's greetings and offer to socialize, even though they're moving through the area slow enough for a stopover. Marty denied it, but I think he was disappointed. Bet they're starved for fresh faces. Huh. Shima's eyes twinkled despite the cafeteria's tinny light. Like a bunch of uptight scientists would have anything to do with the morons here. Ha! Still, new faces couldn't hurt. She nods. Marty said after this, The staff may need to reinvigorate the social life on the rig for the morale since our next shipment isn't for another month. I roll my eyes. I know, me and the others are still annoyed they busted up the gaming ring a few months ago. I pushed around the so-called food on my plate with my plastic fork. But didn't somebody die? What's good for morale is different for us, and death ain't so bad when you're changed to the line. Shima frowns into her cup. I bite my lip. Dr. Valor contacted my relatives on Earth to see if they'd sponsor my travel to one of the other colonies or something. The words rush out of me. Your parents are dead. Shima snorts. I could have told you that. I blinked up at her. You knew? Well, yeah, they're my parents. And my grandparents. But I guess that's never occurred to her to tell me. I shove back from the table. She looks up. What's with you? I square my shoulders, electricity crackling under my skin. Told Takala I'd help him in the shop. Her eyes narrow, then she smiles. You're a good kid, Zen. I don't know what to say to that. We've never been close. We don't talk about these kinds of things, so when she does act motherly, the times I can count on one hand, I freeze up, hyper aware of the awkwardness. I settle on. I'll see you tomorrow. Back to the machine shop. The only answer for today. Takala's closed things up, but he gave me the override code within 6 months of first letting me onto the floor. I get out my wings. I can't ignore what they're supposed to be, not any longer. Dr. Villar said it was herself. I need to find a way to fly from here, rise up from my past. I don't care if my poor impulse control is taking over or not. When we learned in school that on Titan people can fly, I started working on my wings. And I guess subconsciously I've been waiting for a reason to see if the rumors are true. With the last rivet welded into place, my metal and plastic feathers are in perfect order. I have my wings. I just need a Sub-Zero suit now. Those are kept in the maintenance bay. It's not hard to bypass the door security. Orphans learn to do that early on. And I grab the first suit I find. I get it on, seal it up tight, then fit the wings' rubber and canvas straps over my shoulders. Like two halves of a heart, the wings run the length of each arm, the tips jingling against the concrete floors as I make my way to the upper deck. I stand on the railing. The thick atmosphere settles over me as the door alarms protest. The other orphans and the convicts are always setting them off. I've got a few minutes at least to work up my courage before security comes. I stare into Titan's haze. There's nothing here for me. I knew that for a while, but now is the time to do something about it. I jump off the railing, higher than I ever could have managed inside the rig. My heart stops as my ascent slows, and I tip forward into the sky. The drag of the wings dig the straps into my shoulders almost immediately. Opening my arms wide, I hold them like that for a count of 3, and wait for that fraught moment when I'll know just how good my handiwork is. The wings hold. I pump my arms, fly a few feet higher, and lean right to angle myself toward my future. If the research vessel is here to monitor Saturn's interaction with Titan, that makes it easier to navigate. I just have to aim for the yellow-orange disk eclipsing the sky. With luck, I'll catch up to the ship before it gets too far. The suit keeps out the cold, true, but the heat my body exerts to keep me aloft is thick inside the layers, slow to escape. Sweat pricks my eyes as I flap and glide and flap some more. I fly around clouds of hydrocarbons when I can. Titan's covered in them. Methane, ethane, tholins. It's cold enough they behave like water on Earth, collecting in clouds, raining down on the surface, and then returning to the atmosphere where the process starts all over again. A huge hydrocarbon pocket's dead ahead, unavoidable. I take a deep breath and brace myself for the reduced visibility and the increased drag as I sink into it. It takes a moment for my eyes to adjust to the dimness. I hit something and nearly double over in pain. My eyes widen at a lifeless body in a pressurized suit, just like mine, hovering in the cloud. There's no telling how long the body's been trapped here. Oh God, there's more of them, dozens. Too many helmets knocked aside, revealing ghostly pale faces, slightly bloated, eyes opened or closed, blood staining their suits, slash marks cutting through the thick material along their necks and wrists. The cold, the hydrocarbons must slow the rate of decay. Dinner claws its way back up my throat. I choke it back as I try to maneuver between the bodies. I can make out the company's logo on some of the suits. Bodies usually get incinerated on the rig, but this? So many? This must be the convict uprising. I pieced together enough of the history to know a team of convicts were assigned to repair a faulty exterior handling unit. A dangerous mission, requiring self-propelled pressurized suits with safety lines tethering them to the rig. And now those suits are the very things keeping them in the gruesome orbit around Titan. Instead of repairs, the convicts cut the lines and tried to hijack control of the rig. The company's security force fought them off. I'm not sure if tensions between the convicts and the rig staff will ever go away. I should keep going, keep my head down and get out of here. But I realize I'm looking for him. The one who gave me life and then made it worse. A figure on the periphery demands my attention. There's nothing special about it, except for the black hair, glossy dark, just like mine. A sturdy build that'll be mine in a few years. Without thinking, I'm already banking to sweep around and take another look. I blink back sweat and something else as I stare into my father's face. He's not scary, not in the way I expected from all the hushed tones in which he's been mentioned over the years. I have his cheekbones and jaw, but Shima's lips and nose. His eyes are closed, relaxed, despite the iron brown stain across his front. But he's still a stranger. And he can't hold me back any longer. I won't let him. My stomach heaves. I've got to keep going. I've got to find the research vessel. My only way out. With my wings, they can't doubt my determination. I'll prove myself useful. I'll prove I am more. A few flap of my wings and I escape the cloud. I force myself to ignore the sick crusted inside my helmet. I barely register the burn of my shoulders and pectorals. I have only eyes for the dark blip on the horizon, the research vessel. If I had hesitated, if I hadn't learned about it from Shima, no, I won't think about that or the fact that I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to Katala. But Dr. Valora will understand. At least she'll try. The bright lights urge me on. As I get closer, I spy an observation deck where I can strip off my wings, set down what I've been carrying so long. They can chain me to their machine shop if they want. I don't care. As long as this vessel leaves Titan's orbit one day, that's all that matters. The end.
So touching and so plausible. We were just talking in the chat about how we wish that people would evolve along with technology.
Yeah.
Become better instead of using it to make chain gangs in space.
I mean, where there's a will, there's a way.
That was really good. Thank you.
No, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. And I think it paired well with Pauline's story by accident.
Good.
So yeah.
Did you two know each other?
No, this is our first time. So it's been nice to find another.
Interesting. I don't think either of you told me that they were both set in space either.
No.
But
And I'm actually trying to finish a Titan story as we speak.
Oh, nice.
But there were no
Life
chain
sciences
gangs in mine.
is okay.
Wow, that was really something. Thank you both. Folks, Daniel and I are here every week. We're hoping to get these two back at some point as well. But Daniel and I are here every week. And next week, our readers are Santo Iheswe and Linz McLeod. I do recommend checking storyhour2020.com the day of the reading for any announcements or changes. Storyhour2020.com is also a good place to learn about upcoming authors. And you can check the recordings page to just click through to any programs that you may have missed and want to watch on Facebook. You can also browse through the Facebook page if you do Facebook on its own. That's cool too. Pauline Barmby, Laura Teffeau, Thank you both so much for sharing your stories. We'd also like to thank SIFWA for the Givers Fund grant that keeps Story Hour going every week. But thank you most of all to my co-host, Daniel Marcus, without whom literally none of us would be here tonight. And I'd also like to thank all of you who are here, all of you who are here now, all of you who are watching on Facebook at some point in the future. Because as long as we all enjoy these stories together, we're all somehow in that same story hour. Good night.